Horror doesn't always have to be jump scare after jump scare or a non-stop gore fest. It doesn't have to have aliens, terminators, or predators, to say nothing of any of the other monsters we've seen over the years. Movies that don't include those coveted horror checklists typically get lumped into the thriller category, like Silence of the Lambs or even Get Out. It's funny how those are the movies that the Globes and Oscars want to award. And without a shadow of a doubt, there's horror films that can be labeled something a little more friendly to draw more audience demographics or get better ink and reviews. I'm here to tell you that sometimes a movie comes along that doesn't have a big bad monster and has very little blood to speak of, but can be more affecting and more horrifying than anything you could dream of. Sometimes the very real horror of loss and people you thought you knew can be the scariest thing of all. So here is my invitation to you. Now, let's get this out of the way. No, this isn't the vampire movie from 2022 that was a surprise hit for Screen Gems and Sony Pictures. The invitation I'd like you to accept is a movie from 2015 that had a very limited release but wowed at SXSW, as well as having incredibly high critical ratings, and it continues to find new audiences via streaming. Of all the movies I've covered on this show, it's the one that messes with me the most, and the one that I hope to expand its audience for. The film was written by Phil Hay and Matt Manfredi, with directing duties falling on Karen Kusama. Kusama might not be a name at the front and center of your mind, but prior to the invitation, she directed Girl Fight, Neon Flux, and Jennifer's Body. Since directing this film, she's mostly stuck with TV with the likes of The Outsider, Dead Ringers, and a new favorite for this writer, Yellow Jackets. The writing duo has quite a bit under their belt too, while also being frequent collaborators with the director. I think that's a big reason that this movie feels so personal. The cohesion between the behind-the-camera talent gels really well together. The actors chosen for the role are a good mix of known character actors, and I think that's another reason why this movie works so well. The group of friends mostly feels like a group of friends that any of us could have, and you're not watching someone like Brad Pitt have a conversation with, I don't know, let's say Emily Blunt. Logan Marshall Green plays the partially broken and very haunted Will. We learn pretty early on in the movie that the reason for his separation from his wife was due to the death of their young son, something they both blame themselves for as well as blaming each other. Green, or as my brother calls him, we have Tom Hardy at home, does an amazing job with the role. He is much better than the label my brother crowned him with, and he's been in more than a few big projects. On the small screen, he carved out minor roles early on things like 24 and The OC. He would continue that trend with larger roles in shows like The Quarry, Dark Blue, Damnation, and Big Sky. As for the silver screen, he is no stranger to genre and horror either. One of his big breakout roles was in Prometheus, but he also showed up in Devil and the criminally underrated Upgrade. His pain, unease, and suspicions are all palpable here, and you experience the journey with him. Joining him in the cast are Michiel Huisman from Game of Thrones, Lindsay Berge, Tammy Blanchard, Emma Yahtzee Coronildi, Toby Huss, and almost always MVP, John Carroll Lynch. And he is in one of his most John Carroll Lynch roles ever. The movie opens up with a couple, Will and Kira, on the way to a gathering of friends at Will's ex-wife's house. It's strange because they received a very fancy invitation, and Will and his former wife haven't seen each other in a long time. Will hits a coyote and puts it down out of mercy before they arrive at his former home with Eden. He's happy to see his friends who used to be a part of the same group together, but he keeps seeing flashbacks of his deceased son and even some memories involving Eden. The group is so loving and happy to include his new girlfriend Kira, but you can tell there is a sadness and tension in every conversation. Every interaction between the friends, particularly when Eden and Will speak for the first time in a long time, you can just feel it. It's weird. David is introduced to the movie, and he and Eden met in a grief group after his own wife passed away. They're dating now, and the whole point of this party is to let grief, pain, and sadness go. Will is obviously uneasy, but there is a sense of distrust within him too. He's not entirely sure why he's here or why any of them should all be back together. While the house is beautiful and big, there's also a staggering sense of claustrophobia found within as the group all sit together. To a additional new friends, Sadie and Pruitt, are introduced from the same grief group that David and Eden are part of. They're strange, but they also seem very friendly and open to the rest of the group. We see flashbacks of the bad times too, the ones after their son died where Will and especially Eden were very self-destructive. The suspicions continue for Will as he notices how strange Eden is acting, but also things like the windows now having bars on them. Eden explains that it's a different neighborhood and she's also different. This change is evident again when she slaps Ben for not taking her change seriously. The whole movie is peppered with all these small shock moments followed usually by normal conversation that feels very organic. It feels like conversations you would have with your friends. David locks the door and Will again needs to prod into what is going on, but David relents and leaves a key under the door at least. You feel the same unease that Will feels, but you also understand he just doesn't feel right based on where he is. Finally, the pyramid scheme begins. Eden, David, Sadie, and Pruitt all found closure and were able to let go of their pain through a grief group called The Invitation. They show them a video and the leader of the group is Toby Huss. Look, if he walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's probably a duck. The group of friends witness the uncomfortable death of a woman on tape and none of them want in. This does feel very cult-like, right? The movie was actually going to have a much bigger name cast originally. When it was being developed, it had Zachary Quinto, Topher Grace, and Luke Wilson in some of the bigger parts. While I'm sure they would have done a great job, having a lesser known cast actually helps some of them shine more, particularly Logan Marshall Green. The group explains why they brought them here, and it's to rekindle the group but also help them. More and more strange occurrences bother Will, like one of their friends being absent, a pill bottle that he finds in Eden's dresser, and the new friends acting a little strange. He is grounded by his other friends, but one of them leaves after she feels uncomfortable, and she's almost guilted into staying. Pruitt has to move his car to get her out, and we don't see her fully leave. In fact, she's flagged down by Pruitt, and that's the last we see. Will is the only one watching, but of course, so are we from his perspective. His friends and hosts all tell him there's nothing to worry about, but he just can't shake the feeling that something is very off. He finally gets service on his phone and gets a call, something that the movie cleverly plays off of with their location not getting good cell reception. On the phone is his friend Choi, who wasn't late, but he had actually been there first and he's gone now, and they deny seeing him. This leads to a blow up. All the tension, angst, and suspicion that Will was feeling before turns into a need to protect his friends and accusations are thrown around. They've had a nice dinner, but he just can't believe that everything is normal. Then Choi walks in and his world and sense of right is completely turned around. Has his grief led him to hold on to so much anger and distrust that he can't just be happy for his own ex-wife? His friends are embarrassed for him but still willing to help him and understand his grief. Will apologizes and collects himself before going off to take a minute to compose. He watches a different tape that's much more ominous before seeing David hang and light a red lantern in the backyard. Back at the table, Will can't help himself and knocks a few of the wine glasses over and starts another scene. Now at this point in the movie, we've seen some pretty suspicious behavior, but it's all explained away. Not here though. Will was right and the rest of the movie is that much more terrifying because of it. Sadie erupts with anger towards Will, who defends himself in the struggle and knocks her out. It's there we notice that Gina, who had unfortunately drunk the wine before Will knocked it away, has died from an obvious poisoning. The other cult members scramble and start killing their guests one by one. The movie becomes an inverse home invasion flick where the innocent folk are doing their best to try and escape a house of crazy people instead of holding their home base from intruders. Everyone dies except for Will, Kira, and Tommy. They're the only survivors and they were able to take out their assailants. The movie has one more frightening reveal though, as the survivors go to the backyard to put Eden's dying body out as a last request, and they hear screams from all over the city. There's fires, gunfire, and screams all beneath the glow of countless other red lights. The cult was much bigger than they thought. The Invitation was only released in a very limited number of theaters, but did well and still holds very high critical and audience praise. The director and writers had complete creative control over the project, and it was released as a true indie movie. This helps go a long way in making the movie special and should be one of the next movies you cross off your list of best horror movies you never saw. Thank you for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Horror Originals channel and tell your friends who like this sort of content, and don't forget to ring the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest videos. We're an independent company and we appreciate all of your support.